The National Wildlife Research Center is situated 30 kilometers south of Taif at an altitude of 1,400 meters on the interior plateau of Arabia, just east of the Sarawat Mountains. It covers an area of 650 hectares of acacia savanna and is completely fenced. The center is divided into numerous enclosures varying from 0.5 to 100 hectares, where the animals are kept in semi-captive conditions. 70 hectares have been set aside as botanical reserve for the purpose of studying the evolution of vegetation protected from grazing. The center is part of the conservation effort undertaken in the kingdom by the National Commission for Wildlife Conservation and Development. The center is equipped with extensive facilities, including high-tech and technology laboratories. And the objectives of the centers are to breed endemic species of Saudi Arabia, particularly endangered ones, to reintroduce those species into the wild, and notably in protected areas established by the Commission, to undertake the scientific research on those species, and to undertake research on habitat rehabilitation associated with reintroduction programs to enhance the success of those operations. And finally, to assist the Saudi wild conservation's efforts in promoting wildlife conservation by producing films to Saudi Arabian television. We have the Hubara bustard. In Saudi Arabia, this magnificent bird is only known to breed in the protected area of Harrat al-Harra. More than 250 birds are kept in captivity at the center, where the behavior is monitored. In spring, the male performs an extraordinary display to attract the females, and a group of 10 birds has been released in a 100-hectare pen for study of behavior under wild conditions. Such monitoring will assist in reintroduction. And following those pilot operations, offspring of the captive population will be used to restore Hubara populations in the kingdom's reserves. The Arabian bustard, one of the world's largest flying birds, was rediscovered in the kingdom by the Saudi wildlife conservation biologist in the Tihama in the year 1987. And the Arabian helmeted guinea fowl is now occurring only around Jizan. A captive population has been established to keep the genetic purity of the Arabian fawn. Then we have the ostrich, which has been extant in Arabia for 40 years. The red-necked ostrich is bred in the center for possible reintroduction into protected areas. The Arabian oryx became extinct in the wild during the 70s, but was saved from total extinction by captive. The Arabian oryx became extinct in the wild during the 70s, but was saved from total extinction by captive breeding. The animals from the center were originally kept in Thumama, and the main objective of this breeding program is to produce a healthy and disease-free herd for reintroduction in the wild. The oryx in Taif are reproducing well, with most of the females producing a calf every 10 months. At the center, the oryx graze and natural vegetation and also receive supplementary food. An initial reintroduction program has been started in the 2,500 square kilometers Mahazzat al-Sayyid protected area situated 150 kilometers east of Taif. The Nubian ibex is found in the mountains only, and the breeding program at the center was initiated with 24 animals donated by the San Diego Zoological Society. The gazelles in Arabia are represented by the Arabian gazelle, the Dorcas gazelle, and the sand gazelle, and these three species are bred at the center as well. King Khalid Wildlife Research Center, referred to as KKWRC, was founded in 1987 by the Saudi Wildlife Commission. The center was given the mission for managing and developing the private animal collection of the late King Khalid, and this collection contained over 600 animals of 20 different species, including a number of valuable Arabian species. The animals were kept in a 6-hectare enclosure on the King's Ranch Thumama, which lies about 70 kilometers north of Riyadh at the foot of the scenic Orama escarpment. To facilitate the work of the center, the Saudi Wild Conservation constructed a laboratory and office block close to the original enclosure, as well as more than 70 breeding species and pens, each about 0.5 hectare in area. The center was also given the use of the stable complex of Thumama. All the activities of the center are aimed at implementing the species and the policies of the Saudi World Conservation, which are determined by its Board of Governors under the leadership of its chairman, His Royal Highness Prince Sultan bin Abdulaziz. In the 5 years of the center's existence, the animal collection has grown to nearly 500 specimens, and it has been completely organized. Most non-Arabian species have been moved out, and priority have been given to native Arabian species such as oryx, idmi, and dream. Scientific captive breeding programs have been developed for these species, using the late king's animals as founder stock. The reem and the idmi are the most numerous species, and both are now being reintroduced into the wild. To run successful captive breeding and reintroduction programs, a range of activities are necessary. Animals must be fed and cared for, and they must be frequently be captured and handled, either for veterinary purposes or to move them to new locations, such as reintroduction sites. Research into scientific and veterinary issues must be undertaken to improve the prospects of successfully returning endangered animals to the wild. The public must be informed and educated about the aims and value of conservation programs. Situated about 5 kilometers from the laboratory, breeding pens, and original enclosure, the headquarters building is adjoined by a complex of stables and paddocks, all of which are intensively used for current time. Clinical care, animal management, and research. Ongoing research includes investigation of gazelle, ecophysiology, and reproductive biology. King Khalid Wildlife Reserve Conservation Laboratory has a sophisticated diagnostic capability which has been intensively and successfully used to solve disease problems. It also has a growing scientific capabilities with current activities including research into gazelle genetics. The breeding penhouse, hundreds of gazelles of size, different species, the Afri, the Dorcas, the Idmi, the Reem, Summerings, and Thompsons. The areas of Thumama which surround the King Khalid Wildlife Reservation Center support indigenous Arabian flora and fauna at the same time. The dove being a particularly common species, research on the native flora and fauna is one of the center's objectives. Ongoing activities include a project on the small carnivorous of Thumama, which is being undertaken in collaboration with the University of Oxford. The Saudi Wild Conservation's captive herd of Arabian oryx, now kept at the National Wildlife Research Center near Taif, was formed with the funder stock from late King Khalid's collection. A small herd of oryx is maintained for education and aesthetic purposes. To reorganize the King Khalid's collection, it was necessary to capture all of the hundreds of animals in the original 600 hectares enclosures, a formidable undertaking. Accomplishing it required the use of various capture techniques. The new one capture system invented in New Zealand. Food is used to entice animals into a small area surrounded by poles supporting heavy weights, which are attached to plastic sheeting buried in the ground between the poles. When animals enter the harp and the trap to consume the food, a trigger is pulled and the weights drop down, pulling up the plastic sheeting and surrounding the animals, which can then be caught by hand. The purpose of capturing Idmi and Reem in this way is to prepare them for reintroduction into the wild, and of the wild. Around 100 idmi and reem from Thamama have been reintroduced and returned to the wild. This is all has been situated about 200 kilometers south of Riyadh. The National Ibex Reserve is the site of an ongoing IDMI reintroduction project. IDMI fitted with a radio collar before translocation to the National Ibex Reserve, and this collar will enable scientists to track the animal to see how successfully it adapts to life in the wild. IDMI is a pre-released area in the National Ibex Reserve where they are held to enable them to become habituated to their living conditions before they are released. Radio-collared male idmi thriving in the National Ibex Reserve more than a year after breeding release. And because of its closeness to Riyadh, the center is well placed to inform and educate the public about the aims and value of conservation, in particular, a vital task of informing the youth of today about the responsibilities of tomorrow is one of the most important challenges facing King Khalid Wildlife Reserve Center and its parents organization, the Saudi Wild Conservation.